Okay, so what you eat, and especially what you drink at night, is one of the most overlooked points for blood sugar stability, sleep quality, and cortisol regulation. And this matters because insulin resistance doesn't appear overnight. It often builds for up to 15 years before prediabetes, silently affecting sleep quality, nighttime urination, and stress hormones like cortisol. And here's the hidden loop most people never see. When sleep quality drops, cortisol rises. When cortisol rises, blood sugar rises. When blood sugar rises, sleep gets worse again. That becomes a self-reinforcing metabolic style. So at night, when you stop eating for 12 to 14 hours, blood sugar can begin to drop. The body cannot allow blood glucose to fall too low, so it activates backup systems. So cortisol, the stress hormone from adrenal glands, rises to push glucose back up. Adrenal activation increases alertness and wakes you up. And adrenaline, which is a neurotransmitter, can also trigger sudden nighttime arousal. High cortisol over time increases visceral fat inflammation, which can lead to other issues such as release of inflammatory cytokines, interleukin 6, and TNF alpha. I have I have a video on iron trapped in macrophages that has to do with interleukin 6. So that goes to show that a visceral fat inflammation correlates with that video. So feel free to check out my iron trapped in macrophages video if you haven't done so already. So poor sleep increases cortisol the next night, worsening glucose instability. Now there is a kidney and hormone link because cortisol and inflammation also affect kidney level glucose regulation systems, such as Megalin and Cubilin receptors, which I also already made a video on that one, so feel free to check that one out as well. And Megalin and Cubilin, they help reclaim nutrients and proteins from urine. Chronic cortisol elevation and metabolic stress can impair these receptor systems, which are Megalin and Cubilin, indirectly through inflammation and oxidative stress. So this cortisol elevation and inflammation impairing Megalin and Cubilin uh, contributes to fluid imbalance, nighttime urination, and electrolyte disruption. The electrolyte disruption itself can lead to other issues, possibly rigid ECM. Immune cells cannot enter to attack cancer cells because potassium as an electrolyte could possibly be impaired due to high cortisol. And potassium has to do with reducing ECM rigidity. When blood sugar is unstable, it's not just a glucose problem. It becomes a multi-organ stress loop involving kidneys, adrenals, and fat tissue inflammation. In the early morning, cortisol naturally peaks around 8 a.m. That is why many diabetics experience highest blood sugar in the morning, even without eating sugar the night before, hence called the dawn phenomenon. Okay, now for 7 night drinks that break the loop. These drinks support blood sugar stability, cortisol reduction, and improved sleep quality. And they work together as a system, not in isolation. So the first one is apple cider vinegar plus or with cinnamon water. So combine 1 to 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar with water and a pinch of cinnamon, and this creates a metabolic support drink, helping improve insulin sensitivity, also stabilizing glucose release from the liver at night. Also, apple cider vinegar helps dissolve biofilms. Biofilms, they sequester nutrients, uh, which is a rabbit hole for a different video. Next drink is chamomile tea. So chamomile tea lowers cortisol activity and protects pancreatic beta cells, which are the insulin producing cells, from stress damage, and also improves sleep depth. As a result of helping to lower cortisol, chamomile also helps preserve the megalin cubilin activity at the kidneys, because high cortisol can degrade the megalin cubilin. So next drink here is golden milk, which is turmeric with a ginger latte, a combination of turmeric with ginger, and this pairing reduces systemic inflammatory cytokines linked to visceral fat, supports recovery pathways during sleep. So ginger golden milk is great to use if you are a bodybuilder or working out, because bodybuilders need to recover, and also improves insulin sensitivity, because insulin sensitivity is pretty much the opposite of diabetes. So drink number 4 is aloe vera juice, which supports digestive lining repair. That's critical to keep lipopolysaccharides from leaking out, and also causing or interacting with the chylomicrons, where the fat-soluble vitamins are supposed to be managed and transported. But again, that's for a different video. And aloe vera juice also is involved in pancreatic insulin response support. So aloe vera juice is definitely good for diabetics, since diabetics cannot produce enough insulin, or they are literally insulin deficient, which can lead to a lot of problems. So aloe vera juice might be able to help diabetics produce insulin again. And to make things even better, aloe vera juice also reduces internal inflammatory signaling that often worsens insulin resistance. So on to drink number 5 is berberine tea. Berberine functions similarly to metformin in glucose regulation, improving insulin sensitivity, reducing the need for cortisol-driven glucose compensation during sleep. So this next drink, number 6, it has to have, or you require functioning kidneys in order for it to work, as well as the megalin cubilin. And this drink number 6 is electrolytes, such as potassium and magnesium. So magnesium directly lowers cortisol activity, which is great, so that the megalin cubilin is not degraded. Magnesium also improves sleep depth. As a result of a better sleep, your cortisol levels should not be so high in the morning to reduce the negative effect of the cortisol, which is reducing the megalin cubilin that is supposed to be responsible for breaking down the vitamin D complex to avoid a vitamin D deficiency. So magnesium supports your vitamin D levels just by lowering cortisol. And then potassium, as a part of the electrolytes, essential for glucose storage in liver and muscle to prevent glucose from floating around in the bloodstream, because it is possible that tumors could actually feed on blood glucose if the glucose it is not stored away in the liver or in the muscle. And potassium reduces stress response load on adrenal glands. And drink 7, sodium as a support with electrolytes. Salt is often misunderstood in metabolic health, but sodium does support adrenal function and prevents dehydration-driven blood sugar concentration spikes, which could possibly also feed tumors. And also sodium or salt, in some cases, can actually increase cortisol output due to perceived physiological stress. So it's important and critical to be careful with sodium and not take too much, since cortisol too much could reduce vitamin D levels due to reducing the megalin and cubilin. But this is why balanced sodium intake can still improve calmness before sleep and glucose concentration control overnight. Okay, so here's where the low cortisol, high cortisol balance comes in. So in high cortisol states, this suppresses immune function and increases visceral fat cytokine output, which can also negatively affect immunity. But low cortisol states, especially if it's chronically suppressed, uh, possibly because of chronic high cortisol for too long, could suppress adrenal output, leading to cortisol deficiency or low cortisol. Low cortisol can also impair immune readiness. So whether if cortisol is too high or too low, either way, you're still going to have an impaired immune system. So that's why it's important to keep the cortisol levels in check and to know when to lower it and when not to let it go up too much. These 7 drinks act as metabolic support switches that interrupt the loop. Try one consistently, track how your sleep and nighttime waking changes, and observe how your body responds. And I'll see you in the next video.